Ladies and gentlemen, you're all welcome. I would like to do my presentation in English. If we call it international, we have to speak a language that the international audience can understand. I would like to thank to everybody who contributed and made it possible for this seminar to be in Cyprus. I'm very happy that somebody over there put a lot of effort to make it possible. Well, today I'm going to talk about traditional mud brick. It is, well, everybody said it's a very common material, but according to the resources, geography, it has different methodology, different material all around the world. I'm going to talk about not mud brick in general, but activities beyond mud brick. That's what I call them. Because the mud brick construction on its own doesn't make a sheltered home. You need a lot of different activities which involves skilled labor and craftsmanship to make a brick house to be a home or a habitable place or shelter for a family. Actually, there is a Turkish song which says, Kerpic', kerpic üstüne vurdum binayı, binayı kurarken gördüm Leyla'yı. Leyla açtı başıma türlü belayı. Which says, brick by brick, I built the house. And while I was building the house, I saw Leyla, and Leyla gave me a lot of trouble. I think the person who was building the house realized that what's going to give him a headache is all the activities beyond mud brick. Because the mud brick with a bit of labor, a bit of water, and a few molds, he could have made come true. But who was going to do the joinery? Who was going to do the doors? Who was going to do the floor? Who was going to do the roof? And where the material is going to come to? Where is the capstones? Who is going to collect the cane, clean the cane? How is he going to tie the cane? What about the sprouts? Where is he going to get them from? So, before we start building a mud brick house, we have to take into consideration all the other activities that's going to take place to make this structure functional. So I made a model, actually. It's 5:1 scale, and it basically shows all the other activities that take place and why. Every activity is done for a reason. Well, one of the problems of mud brick construction, as Özge was saying, we had rain and it was wet, and then our building failed. So water is a very good friend of mud brick. When you start shaping, molding, plastering, laying bricks, you need water. Without water, you cannot do all this activity. But once your house is complete, this good friend, what we call water, becomes not a very good friend, becomes the real enemy. So we have to take some precautions how to avoid water entering the building and damaging our mudbrick. Because water in mudbrick reduces the load-bearing quality of the brick, and the house can actually collapse. Because 12, I think, to 13% moisture in the mudbrick is the maximum we can have. And that's not a lot. We're lucky about the climate because Cyprus, we don't have a high moisture content in the air, and then we have some rain, but taking the right proportions, we can actually avoid the damage that the water is going to do. Well, I want to talk about the footing. Well, water, actually, people think that it comes down, but water goes up too. There is a process of capillary action. So a wet floor actually climbs up the wall. So we have to do something to slow the flow of water or moisture before it reaches the bricks. So the damage is minimum. That's why above the footing of the mud brick, usually we put 2 layers of stone, which is about, they call it knee-high in old times. And this acts as I should say a filter. It slows down the capillary action of water coming up to the brickwork. So the idea here is not to stop the water, but to minimize it. Of course, nowadays, with the introduction of different materials, people can use a moisture barrier, which is a piece of fabric, plastic. They use this isolation material, this is bitumen. You can do a lot of things. But isolating sometimes is not a solution to your problem. I think we have to leave the building, reduce the damaging part, and I use the word coexist. I think it's a good term. It's, well, the Russians use it a lot. When capitalism was in the Black War times, and they said, okay, you live with your own system, and we want to live with our communism. And they said, we have to coexist. That's true. So, most of the problems can be solved by letting the coexisting factor take over. It's somewhere in the gray line. One little thing that we have to take care of is when we lay our bricks, when we pour a brick in a mold, we pour it down like this, and this surface sees the sun first. So the edges curl up because it's dying and then drying and then it's shrinking. So takes a shape of concave. It's like this. We have to be sure that when we're putting our bricks down, we just put it upside down. That partially helps the moisture not escaping into the wall and pooling there. Of course, on top of the stone layer here, when we do our fill, before we start laying our bricks, we have to make a dome shape. Because if you make a pool here, then the moisture may collect there and cause joinery. Joinery is where the door frame is actually leaning against the brick. So there's a gap there. So it's more likely that the water is going to escape from this gap and moisture is going to be trapped there and it's going to enter the brick. So the door frame, unlike the brickwork and other material, is just put at the edge of the building, and then an architrave is put to bridge the gap between the mud brick and the door frame. We have to be a bit generous when we make an architrave. It has to be wide enough, so it gives us a good cover there and slows the water entering the building. The second thing is, we have our lintels here. And if we build on top of this, the water running from the face of the wall is going to find itself into the building somehow. So sometimes a piece of metal, mostly it was just a oil barrel in olden times. People used to cut it up and flatten it down and just put it here. And that solved the problem of water going back into the building again. So when the water falls down from the roof, it just ran out. Well, the same process was done with the windows. A piece of wood can be used as well, just to do the same job that this piece of material does there. Okay, threshold is very important. Threshold usually is a bit of marble. And when it's put in position, it's just leaning a bit outwards. There is many reasons why they do that. So the water doesn't find itself getting in. And the other reason, you wouldn't guess. People use the floor as a pour bath. So when you pour the water, having a bath behind the door, the water runs out. We're talking about the survival culture. In survival culture, when you talk about adobe or mud brick house, we're talking about the survival culture. There is no luxuries, it's all necessities. And how to make multiple uses of the accommodation. In that case, you don't need more rooms, you don't need more material, you don't need, well, it's part of ecology. You know, the more you spend, the more unecological your building is. It's not just because we're using earth, okay, the footprint is clean. No. We have to think of all the aspects. This is why people use local material, because transporting the material is a problem again. And another thing is, it wasn't just to build a cheap building. It's build a building which involves labor, which some you pay, and some is done in favors, and some you owe them same amount of labor back. Okay, after the lintels, we come to the roof. Well, to come to the roof, we have to drop the roof down. Do you think I need the slides? PowerPoint? Well, I press one button and change. Okay, let's see. Yes. Okay, that's good. I'll press another one. Okay, I talked about this. Talked about this. Yeah, that's the roof. Well, the roof was consisting of roof members running out of time. Can you not be a little bit generous? 2 minutes to go. 2 minutes to go. Okay. We're talking about the roof houses and all the joinery. It's very important that people use material that has some form of resistance to wood rot, because the beams are sitting in the walls and wood. It was very important. So in Cyprus they mostly use juniper, not pine from Kıbrıs was very common, and Indian beech tree, the Persian lilac, they call it sunlight. It's a nice tissue material for the roof. Okay, on the roof we have the cane, the Cyprus cane. On top, people use the saddle glass. People used to make the saddles out of it. And then we put a brickwork material on top of that, and this is the thickness where we make the top level of the roof. And then we have the capstone. Capstone usually was made out of Cypriot marble. It was locally available. And of course we have to have a spout, water spout. Usually the water spout was kept long so that it doesn't dribble. If the wind comes, it doesn't dribble on the surface of the material. There is one thing about the external plastering. When Mudbricks were laid, you see the gap in between, you never bring the mortar to the edge. You need this gap here to catch the mud, the mortar that you want to use for plastering. And the second thing is, you have to use your hands to struggle on it, and then you have to do the rubbing. Why the rubbing? We have the chopped straw, and the chopped straw, when it's mixed, it faces all over the position. So you put it there, and then you work on it. And actually, when you're doing that, it tickles you. And after a while, it starts getting smooth and becomes like butter. But what you're feeling there is the straw is getting flat onto the wall. So you're building your shield for water-resistant plastic. And you never do any form of plastering externally because you stop the moisture movement and then you kill your building. You compost the material in your building and then your brickwork is dead. And that's unfortunately what they did with Nicosia and big cities to make a building look better. They plastered all the external surfaces, some on Bahçe and all, and they killed all the brickwork. And they call it restoration. It was the destruction of my brickwork. And believe it or not, under the surveillance of what do they call that, SKSR, Department of Antiquities, this is done under the supervision of authorities. It's a very sad story. Well, there was, what came out, there is in the old presentations, there was a time where people asked questions and they got answers. I realized that in this seminar or whatever it is, there is not such a thing. If it's to be educational and if it's to be informative for the listeners, I think part of it should be answer the questions. Thank you for listening.
What kind of plaster are you using?
The plaster is actually the mortar that we make the mud brick. It's exactly the same. But the texture is a bit more moisture in it, so it can be rubbed on. And of course, you wet your wall before you apply it. So there's wet clay, and then there is the wet mud, and that bonds.
Okay, you say something destroyed the mud brick. What plaster destroyed the mud brick?
Any other plaster except mud brick does. The least harmful is the lime mortar. But lime mortar had to be the rock lime, and then had to be prepared and wait, mixed with sun and wait. It's a lot of time involved. Now they use the powder lime, and you don't get the same results out of it. Let's put it this way, okay? There is more to learn about that. Any other questions?
In Cyprus.
You gave the politicians more time. Would you believe it?
İsmail Bey, İlkay Hanım.
Buyur.
We use gypsum plaster inside and outside.
Inside we did, usually in Cyprus, they did the gypsum.
Yes,
Inside.
yes.
Gypsum is a beautiful material as long as water,
Yes,
it's a water retardant.
yes.
It's a very inferior material. I know they use it in Alcare, but unfortunately it's not ecologic, and it's water retardant, and it does a lot of water damage. In the big arches that they build for the big houses, they always use the plaster of Paris, to bond the rocks for quick result of holding the arches. But every house got destroyed because of that plaster there, because the moisture erosion takes place, and that becomes a disaster. Any more questions? No, I'm getting down. Thank you.